We will get started here. We would
Okay.
like to welcome candidates for Clark County Council Chair, Mike Dalesandro and Marc Boldt. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
As you should know, you've been through the process before. We are videotaping this for use on our website for the benefit of our readers. So we'll get started. We'll have each of you introduce yourself, give a little background, and briefly explain why you are running for council chair. Let's start with Mike. Go ahead.
Well, thanks for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys. I live in Battleground with my wife and two daughters. We've been there for about 10 years now, and I currently serve on the city council. I've been involved in local government since 2008, first on the planning commission and now on city council. And in planning commission we go through transportation planning, capital facilities planning, pretty much everything but the budget. So we have a lot of experience there in advising council and an advisory role. And since 2013, been serving in city council. My day job, I'm a supply chain analyst at Boise Paper. So been in the logistics industry for most of my working career. And I've also been in operations management in the logistics industry as well. And I'm running for this position because it's time to change the politics in Clark County, and I feel like that, and through the primary and into the general election, I feel like I'm the best candidate that can do that. I bring a fresh face, a fresh perspective, and I don't have the political battles of the past to fight or refight. I'm a collaborator, I'm a listener, I'm a learner, and I have a reputation of working with everyone on my city council. And we've had our difficulties on city council as well, but we've worked through them, and I like to bring that spirit of collaboration to the county council because we definitely do need it.
Thank you, Marc.
Thank you. I'm Marc Boldt. I was born and raised in Clark County, went to Evergreen, Clark College. I farmed most of my life, had a berry farm for 20 years. Then I was a state representative for 10 years of the 17th district. Come down, I was a county commissioner for 8 years. I've really enjoyed myself serving people. I think, I believe one of the strengths of me is just my past experience, and I do bring a voice of experience and leadership to this job. I've been chair 6 different times in Olympia through majority, a tied house, and minority. So I bring that experience, and then I was chair for 2 times of the commissioners, chair of regional transportation, and then I was the chair of C-Plan. And all through that times, probably one of my strengths, and I learned it a long time ago, when Clyde Ballard, the Speaker of the House, first had me in, and I actually learned this from Bob Williams, and he said, when you go into the Speaker's house, ask him what you can do and how to be a better leader. So that's exactly what I did. And Clyde said, shut up and listen to people. And so my first 2 years, I'm not a talker anyway, but I listened to some of the best people in the state. And that time, there was great leaders. And so I learned an awful lot about leadership, working together, but at the same time, I learned about being the chair, about when you're the chair, regardless where it is, you have a gavel. And that gavel's not to hammer nails in, that gavel is to have control. Sometimes you're working together, because the chair's responsibility is get to know each person, to bring out the quiet ones, to calm down the ones who talk a lot. But sometimes your job is to say no and stand up for yourself. Because I've been a commissioner for 8 years. I believe I have the respect of the vast majority of the county employees. I just talked to a few today, and it's my passion to stand up for them. Yes, there's pros and cons to the county employees, I must add, but when you're the chair, you're responsible for taking the character, bringing the character of this job, and then also the character of the county. And I believe one of the keys is to really stand up for that. I mean, I think, I don't want to belabor it, but I think after the primary, Mike and I were very agreeable, and we had a nice we had a nice election for about 16 hours, I think. It was very nice, you know. And then it all changed, you know. And the thing is, though,
What do you mean it all changed?
Liz Pike. Yeah. And so the thing is that I think Mr. Madores really showed his colors more than ever. And so there is, I bring the strength of saying, all right, this is the way we're going to handle it. One of the things, I'm an FFA kid, I know Robert's rules, I know Reed's rules, I know how to run a meeting with 300 or 400 people. And there's some times where you say, all right, enough is enough. I'm going to work with you, I'm going to serve you, I'm going to do everything in the world. But you know what? We're going to have respect in this council. And if you don't like it, we're going to be disagreeable. If you like it, I'll do everything in the world for you. But I think I bring that to the table. So, and that's why my passion to run.
Great, thank you. Since you brought it up, let's talk about Mr. Madore, and you said he showed his colors, and you've had a contentious relationship with him politically. How would you be able to work with him, and how would you be able to be the chair of a council that may well have 4 Republicans?
Yeah, right. And I've really never had a contentious relationship with Mr. Madore. I mean, I've said the last election, I go on great. I didn't say one thing bad about David. He said quite a few things about me, but he won. That's fine. I've supported him throughout the 2 years. I've questioned some of his things. Everyone does, but I've never had a problem with David. David brings a great business sense to the council. He just has a problem the way he does things. That's really it, And I really don't have a history with David because I really never have worked with him. I have a great history with Tom Milkey because we were roommates and everything, and of course Jeannie Stewart. So I think it just comes to that I will be the chair, and I will do all my part to work with David and to bring out his strengths, but at the same time, this stuff like cutting property tax for 2% when he hasn't even gone through the budget process, I will have to say, sorry, David, respectfully disagree with you. I learned how to do that in Olympia, and I'll do that here.
Well, and we'll get back to the property tax. So, Mike, I'm curious, if you are the chair, you would have at least 3 Republicans, maybe 4, on the council. How do you manage that?
Well, I think it's important you walk into the job without an agenda, without a personal political agenda. It's one thing to get elected, represent the people, have ideas during a campaign, which I've thrown some ideas out there about some policy ideas, but to not marginalize your colleagues, whether it's in the campaign, especially during the campaign, because campaigns and governing are 2 separate things, but you have to be careful because what you say in a campaign can and will be held against you when you're in office, and there's no doubt that would happen. I feel as though that, and I've already met with David. If you don't already know that, I've already met with David. Tried to begin to forge a working relationship there because honestly, I don't have much of a relationship with David beyond this primary campaign until now. The partisanship aspect is not really of a concern to me. I mean, I currently serve on a nonpartisan city council. Really what it is and what the issue we've been having at the county level has been the way that the meetings are run, the lack of trust that's perceived by the community, more than perceived, I would say. But so it's really going to be coming into that role of chair and working with everyone, genuinely trying to work with everyone and not marginalizing anybody up there because you have disagreements with them politically about an issue. It's as simple as that.
And now you mentioned you're on a nonpartisan council. Why are you running as a Democrat?
Because I'm a Democrat.
Okay. Now, and Mark, previously you were a Republican council member, why are you running as an independent?
I don't have a party because when I was a freeholder, I didn't believe that, the cities don't have parties. And I believe the county's job is to implement the will of the state. So especially in this job, and when I was a freeholder, I had asked to go nonpartisan, just like the cities do. That didn't go anywhere, but I just felt as a chair, you can work a lot better without a party behind you. It's a personal thing, still really a Republican, but it's just a personal preference. Can work with anyone.
Well, let's talk a little bit about bridges. We know the history of the CRC. We know County Council Member David Medora thinks that the first priority should be an East County bridge. But let me go with you first, Mike. Your history with the CRC is varied, I guess, is what I would say. You initially supported it and then backed away from supporting it. Mm-hmm. Where are you on the crossings over the Columbia River? If you had a magic wand and were able to wave it and make something happen, what would it look like?
Well, I think the number one priority needs to be replacing the I-5 bridge for this region. So the Southwestern Washington Transportation's number one priority is replacing the bridge.
But you ultimately opposed the CRC project.
Well, there are aspects of the project that I didn't personally support.
Right.
I didn't personally support the idea of not knowing what the tolls were going to be.
Right.
I personally support the idea of light rail to the point of, I don't think that light rail is evil or anything like that, but I don't know that it's necessarily the right thing for Clark County. And when it went to the voters have said, I'm not sure about this and opposed it.
So what do you see then?
What do I see?
Right, so okay.
Reality is what the reality of the situation. If we're going to have a project that's going to be successful, it's going to take both states and the federal government, period. So the federal government has already said, if you want funding for this project, you will have to have a multimodal aspect to the project. So if that multimodal aspect and both states agree and the federal government's on board with it being light rail, then that's fine with me. If it's BRT, then that's fine with me as well. The main priority is getting the bridge replaced, in my eyes.
All right, and this idea, Medora idea that we should be concentrating first on an East County bridge, what do you think of that?
Well, I just think it's not practical. Going back to reality here, it's just not practical. We can replace the I-5 bridge first and then work on additional crossings, and that process will take years. You can't just go and put a bridge on the ballot and build it across the river. There's two states involved. Depending on where it crosses the river, you get the federal government involved. So it's not that simple. But we do need to have a plan. But you know what that plan is going to have to include both sides of the river, not just what we want in Clark County.
So would you characterize Medora's proposal as wacky?
I wouldn't use the term wacky. I would just say it's not grounded in reality.
That's pretty close. I think if I looked at the word wacky up,
Well, no, you just.
I think that's what it would say. not
Well,
grounded in
no.
reality.
Let me explain that.
I'm just saying.
Wacky is sort of
looking it up.
personal. Okay, well, what I'm getting at is, it takes a lot for a bridge to be built. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. It's not grounded in reality. You can't just go and you can't just wave a wand and build a bridge.
Right.
So I wouldn't call it wacky. I would just call it not grounded in the reality of the situation.
Okay. Mark, what's your view on this whole bridge?
On the
thing?
bridge? Actually the nice part, getting back to the non-party, the nice part about being a non-party is that I can say Jamie Herrera has not had a down hall meeting and has not talked about the bridge ever. I don't know if she's ever talked about the bridge in this room or not, but it is a federal interstate bridge. When I was the chair of CTRAN and I was in a meeting with Senator Murray, I said specifically, Senator, are you willing to risk the bridge for light rail? And she said yes. The problem with the bridge is that we had David Evans doing sound bites and really not talking about conversation. And so, lo and behold, David Medora comes in with better sound bites. We don't have a bridge. What needs to happen is that, first of all, our senators and Jamie and the counterpart needs to talk about transportation in a logical manner. I mean, the bridge is bad because, yes, it's unsafe. But the bridge is bad because you have ramps coming in two sides on a closed bridge, and all you have to do is drive from the Rose Garden or from north or Hazeldale south, and when you go 10 miles an hour until the hump of the bridge, and then you go, 60 after that bridge, it is the bridge. So there can be a good conversation of saying what we do. And the problem is that everybody concentrates on, oh, well, it's 3 lanes or 4 lanes, when really it isn't the 3 lanes or 4 lanes. The fact of the matter is that traffic slows because there's weaves in and out. And whenever you get weaves in and out, all you gotta do is look at, drive. All you gotta do is look and say, gee whiz, that's a crazy person. He's going all over the place. Well, every time there's a lane change, the guy behind slows down, the guy behind slows down, pretty soon it's stopped. And so,
Well, what are you gonna do, bridge-wise? What would you do?
What would I do?
If you had a magic wand, what would you do?
I would first of all go over to Multnomah County, and Multnomah County and Clark County would have a good conversation on transportation of I-5 corridor.
All right, hold time out.
Okay.
You got the wand now, you see, you're
I
the
put
king,
the
there's
bridge in.
no more talking with
Okay.
people, no more,
Okay.
You see, you got the
It's up to
wand,
me.
you got the wand.
I would put the bridge in with the capacity of light rail.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
What do you think about that East County Bridge thing?
It's wacky.
There you go, see?
The only reason I say it's wacky is because when I was a state representative, Don Benton and I spent a lot of time, and we actually got 192nd through the state legislature. So I know enough history in that 192nd Avenue to know if you're gonna make an East County Bridge, you're gonna have to tear that whole thing out. So, it's wacky.
All right, so speaking of wacky, I'll go to Mike first. That whole Don Benton hiring thing, Department of Environmental Services, where are we going with that thing?
Where are we going?
Yeah,
Well, I put a proposal out there.
I do know that.
Yes, you
I
did.
asked you first.
That's why I asked me first. Obviously, there are some concerns on the process of how that hire was made. And the county has paid the price for that, both financially and I think publicly. I know you probably won't believe me when I say that this really isn't about Don Benton, but it really isn't. Because I knew what was coming down the pike here. It was a 2% property tax proposal by this council. To give that directive to the county manager to make that happen. So how are we gonna generate some savings? What can we do? And the low-hanging fruit to me is the Department of DES, Department of Environmental Services, DES.
Right.
It operated, all those programs were consolidated in 2010. It's something that I've talked to people that understand county operations better than me and said, hey, it can happen again. And it can save us money. So, and it's not a new idea, it's an idea though that I think we need to look at, and something that I would look forward to, or I would put on the agenda to talk about when this new council comes together, because if we're facing potentially now, $11 million budget deficit in 5 years with this property tax proposal, we need to find ways to cut at that a little bit.
Right.
So many issues I'm sure we'll talk about that we're facing, and I just feel like this is an opportunity to do something without the services suffering to the citizens as well, because typically in government when you cut something, you're cutting services, you're cutting you're cutting, the opportunity for someone to get services, and we're not doing that in this situation.
But again, just a real quick follow-up question before we go to Mark. Remember, now you've got the magic wand. So now with the wand, would you expect a year after you've been elected as county chair that DES would be out or on its way out?
With a wand?
Yes.
That's not reality, though.
I know, but we're talking wand now.
It takes a council to make that happen.
Yeah, I get that.
No, but
Huh?
yes, I think within a year, that's, to me, that,
Okay.
what I would look at is how long would it take for that transition?
Yeah.
So we could
Right.
do it in a practical way.
Right.
So whatever that practical amount of time would be
Right.
based on, whatever
Yeah.
Macaulay recommends, then
Okay.
that's fine.
Good. Mark?
Yeah, I think one of the things is, since I was on the commissioner, when that was created, there was 3 different departments. And why it was created is that when a person come in for a project and you were building something that had a road, you would go from the community development side, and then you would go to the public works side. And then in the middle, we had the stormwater stuff, so you would actually talk to 3 people. Permits were a process, just because of that, you were going from place to place. And so we thought at the time, and actually it penciled out to save money, is that we brought everybody together. And so it actually, except for the manager, works pretty good. You get your department, you get your building permit, you go to DES, and then you do your own thing. To really split that up, once again, actually is where do the people go? Do the building people go under Marty Snell again? And do the road people go under Heath Henderson? And what happens to the pure stormwater people? Is there still a stormwater permit because they don't have, quite frankly, building department or the road department knows pure stormwater, what happens there. So does that department still stay? Does it go somewhere else where it really doesn't fit? And I've looked at the numbers, talked to the budget people, and it is a purely, if you get rid of Don Benton and his management stuff, you save about $700,000. What they haven't come across, though, because it's not really known, is what happens when you move. And about 20 people will move under Marty. Well, Marty Snell can't run it, so you're going to have somebody over it, and then the same department over here. And so I'm not real sure if that savings is there. It may be there, it may not be there. And what happens to the permits especially. So I think you put all them them together, and if it does pencil out, that's fine. What I would rather do at the first is to say, Mr. Don Benton, you will not be getting a county check when you are in Olympia. That happened under Bill Barron, that he wasn't supposed to do that. And if you ask me, Mark McCauley caved on that. So that's one of the first things is saying, you have vacation time, personal time, you'll be treated just like everybody else. And then hopefully, we will, if we do keep the department, then we will say, all right, we're going to have a rehire for 2 people. I mean, for Don Benton, and I would also have a rehire actually for the county manager.
Okay, so you're not in favor of McCauley?
I think if you're not in favor of the hiring practice for Don Benton,
Yeah.
to be consistent,
Okay,
you got to do it for McCauley.
okay,
And Mark McCauley can reapply.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and so can Don.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's, I think it's a little dangerous to get into, where, who does what and who goes where, and I, while giving a policy directive to the county manager of, dissolving this department, I think we leave it up to the county manager to make the decision of who goes where, with the directive of, we want to keep services at the same level, or as close to the same level as possible. When it comes to Mark McCauley, I don't have a personal opinion, to be blunt. I don't have a personal opinion about Mark McCauley. I don't, and that's not a negative or positive opinion of Mark, but you know, I would have to work with him to really get a better understanding of how he operates, to have a real judgment on what kind of a job he does as an administrator or an executive, you know, as I do with our city manager in Battleground. You know, we have a relationship, and John Williams is a great guy, and you know, Mark might be a great guy too, but you know, we have to work together for a while to see if that's the case. But this council would, you know, if it comes to deciding on if Mark's going to be the permanent county manager or not, this new council would, we'd have to see how that goes with the new council. It's just not just my decision, you know, as chair. I don't have the magic wand, so.
Oh, no, I gave it to you.
Well,
Let's talk a little bit about another function of this county chair position. And it's sort of like being the face of the county. Now, I get that all of the county councilors are gonna do their thing, and, you know, they're all celebrities in their own right. But we know that the county chairperson is going to be the face of the council. They'll do more ribbon cuttings, more speaking.
mm-hmm.
Everyone will speak, but more speaking than the rest of them. And I'll go to Mike first. How well suited do you feel like you are in that capacity, the public speaking, the appearance thing? How well suited do you think you are for that?
Perfectly suited. I knew what this role was before I filed as a candidate. I don't have any problem at all with any of the functions of the office. I do think it's important that whoever serves in this function, and I have from the beginning, and it's no knock on anybody I've run against, but I just think it's important that this person is an optimistic person, who speaks in optimistic terms, who doesn't push a personal agenda, who represents the council's, even when the council doesn't represent their person, the voters, like if it was my personal views and I'm in a minority, understand that my job is to represent the council and the county, not to represent my views personally as the chair. But you have to be professional, you have to be able to articulate the message, and like I said, you have to be optimistic and positive. I think that's key, and I have no problems at all engaging in that. I believe it or not, I like speaking publicly. You know, it's one of those things, you know, you like to do. I like to meet people, I like to listen. I am too not a talker necessarily, but I do feel like that I possess the skills necessary to articulate a message that people can understand, and that, you know, will be positive. I mean, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Mark, what do you think about that?
Well, you know, it is a part of the chair's responsibility, always really has been, and I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed working with all the city mayors. I've had a great, one of the relationships though is that you'll be responsible for going to Olympia, through Counties Association, talking to legislators, and really taking a view of the county. And like Mike said, sometimes that view may not be your own, but once the council makes a decision, you've got to say that view is your own. I've had that distinct responsibility. In fact, I was in here when the board of C-Tran went to the ballot. I wasn't too thrilled, but you know, the board voted for it, and it was my job to push the ballot measure, which I've been kind of crucified for it, but still, I pushed it to the full extent, and that's my job. And so I think a lot of it is when you go out to the cities or other organizations, if you have enough service behind it, people will see that you're genuine, that you care, that you walk your talk.
Well, how would you grade yourself as a public speaker, with A being the world's greatest and F being I need a lot of help, please?
I would say I'm probably a C+, trying to improve. I mean, I go to Toastmasters all the time, so you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable in that role?
Oh yeah. I enjoy it.
Okay.
Let's move on to some policy. Let's say one of the things the county is going through is considering options for the growth management plan.
Right.
Which alternative do you favor? How do you think we should approach this, Mark?
Yeah, the plan itself, which is, I'm glad we're talking about this, is that I was involved in two plans. I was involved in the Pridemore plan of the 2004, and actually what that board did is they did the plan except for capital facilities. So we did the capital facilities for that plan. Then Betty Sue Morris, Steve Stewart, myself, did the 2007 plan. So I look at how we did that to compare it to now. So we started by meeting with every city and school district, and then we come up with values that we really wanted the plan to be. And we discussed them with the Planning Commission. We had all the foundation in there. So then we went with the population estimate, asked people what they wanted, things like that. What happened now is that essentially nothing happened. Well, the only thing that really happened is that we tried to do a rural plan, so the board didn't like that. So they threw the rural plan off, and then they didn't do anything for about a year and a half, because I guess the bridge was more thrilling to talk about or something. But the planning staff was still doing their own thing, you know. However, if you talk to Oliver and the rest, they weren't too sure what to do. So then they all of a sudden come with the no bill. The cities were putting in their, cities were still doing their work, come up with 3, and then David Medore puts his finger up in the air and said the rural owners need something. Let's come up with alternative 4.
And what did you think of that process?
It stunk.
Why is that?
Well, because like I said, they never talked to city school districts, and your responsibility as a county is to serve the cities and the schools. As I said several times before, and I sound like Betty Sue, is that a county is a regional service provider, and the state mandates and growth management that you serve the cities. That's where growth management comes.
So if you're the chair and David Medore comes forth with alternative 4, how would you handle that? What would you say to him?
Well, what happens really right now, if alternative 4 continues, it will get thrown out. So what the problem is that if it goes too far and gets thrown out, we're not in compliance with growth management. We lose a lot of grants, things like that. I would hopefully, what I will do as chair is I will talk about the growth management, talk about exactly where we are, and then either try and go to alternative 3, probably what is the best suited. It still has its problems. So personally, I would like to go to the alternative 1, which is essentially a no build. We still have enough good land for about 8 to 10 years. Nothing's going to happen. We won't create a false environment where we had in the 90s. So alternative 1 is a no build. Let's get everything set, get through the state, and then let's work from the ground up.
So that would be your preference?
Yeah.
Mike?
I support alternative 3. I have for a while now. And I was pleased to see, the Clark County Planning Commission recommended Plan 3 as well. I know most of the mayors have signed on to it. Our city signed on to it months ago. It most represents historically what we've been doing at the county, which is expanding urban growth boundaries. It is basically essentially Plan 1 with urban growth boundaries expanding. So I think that's a reasonable plan. When it comes to Plan 4, like many, I'm very concerned about it. I think if it were to make it all the way through, obviously the odds are against it, but if it were to make it all the way through and become policy, it would drastically change the face of Clark County, rural Clark County forever, and it would take away, a lot of agricultural lands. I've chatted with friends of Clark County, the Farm Bureau. I mean, there's so many concerns with Plan 4, changing the rural character of Clark County. So when it comes to the process of how that plan was developed, and there's, you know, word of a Plan 5 now or a Plan 4B or whatever you want to call it coming up, moving forward, you know, I just don't see with this new form of government, that's one thing, you know, this overstepping bounds, you know, let the county staff do their job, let the professional people that understand growth management inside and out put the plan out there, and of course, you know, the councilors have an opportunity to, and you know, get involved in that process and the jurisdictions. You, like Mark said, you got to have a collaborative process. You got a process where, you know, Battleground's not left out in the dark. I mean, we're kind of left out in the dark what was going on, especially with Plan 4, right? So we have to have a process in place. Plan 3 to me is the most reasonable way to move forward. I would also support, though, that if, you know, my number 2 choice, I guess, would be to keep on the current plan, just to make sure that we are in compliance with the GMA. If there's a holdup and we can't get consensus on the new council to go with 3, then to at least go with 1. Keep moving forward and then visit in the future.
So if you're the chair, how do you deal with somebody comes out of the blue with alternative 4? How do you handle that?
I would, that's a great question, actually. I think what you do is you say, wow, that's a great idea. Why don't you go talk to the county manager, sit down with him, share your ideas, and leave it at that, because that's what you do. I'm on city council. If you have an idea for something that maybe, you know, you're crossing that line of getting into the executive part of duties and being a policymaker, you go to the county manager and say, here's an idea that I have. And then, you know, you have that conversation, and if it's something that makes sense to proceed forward, then the manager works with staff to make that happen and present that to the council, and the council then, you know, has their vote.
Well, let me stay on that for a second. I'll ask both of you. But what do you think Councilor Medore's motivation was for bringing forward the talk?
Well, all I know is what has been said is the motivation, and it was to hear the property owners that haven't been heard, the rural property owners haven't been heard. I think you can still do that without Plan 4 going into effect. I know, and you brought this up before, Mark's worked on the rural task force with Clark County, and they were working on looking at a way to deal with in a common sense way, property owners who had these large parcels of land before the GMA went into effect, to work with them and have a common sense resolution on how they may potentially be able to subdivide that land out. And I know the Planning Commission pretty much said the same thing. So I think that's a good way to move forward. And if that's really the concern, and that seems to be, from what I've heard, that was the main concern. Like, all these property owners, they can't subdivide. They have property in their family for years and years and years. Well, here's an option to do that. Let's look at a way to do it without drastically changing the entire plan.
But I mean, if 4 were implemented, I mean, it's not going to get implemented, we know that.
Mm-hmm.
But if 4 were to be implemented, essentially what it would do is it would have this growth spurt outside of the urban growth areas. And my goodness, that would actually give the county council more power, because there would be more of a growth base there. And suddenly the county, which is essentially all the non-city areas, would suddenly be a bigger player. You'd be a big shot.
I would argue it would also give the county more problems.
Well, it
We
would.
haven't planned for it.
No, I get that, and that's why there isn't a lot of urban growth in rural county areas for that very reason. They speak about Salmon Creek, for example, of having this problem. It's in the county, you know, but it's really an urban area, and it creates all of these issues because they don't have a real plan to service a place like Salmon Creek, because they're not in an incorporated area. So it seems to me that there could be a motivation here to try to make the county more important than the cities. No? No view on that?
No, I mean, you have a point. I don't know that that's the motivation.
Oh, okay.
You asked me what his motivation was.
Well,
I'm just going on what has been said publicly.
But you've got the wand, so you can get into his
Oh,
head.
no, I can't get in his head. I don't want to get anybody's head.
All right. Mark, what do you think the motivation is behind all 4?
Well, just read the reflector.
Oh, yeah.
That's, you know.
Newspaper
it's
of
his
record,
picture. Yeah, right. You know, Tom Milkey was kind of the rural guy. They were friends, but David doesn't like playing second fiddle. So, growth management plans, I maybe not have said, is kind of boring stuff. It's not exciting stuff. You do everything. You talk to the cities, you talk to the people, you know. Half the people don't like you, half the people do, and all this. And so he has a meeting with Carol Lebanon and Clark County citizens that's really only about 7 or 8 people now. It used to be huge. And they said, hey, you know, we need to be heard. So he says, oh, bingo, I'll make a plan, you know, and Reflector loves him, and, you know, his friends love him, and as you know, David Medor is a great spin master. He can make press out of anything, especially in his own, you know, Facebook or whatever. So I believe that's why he did it. However, the question in your other is that it's exactly what's going to happen is false. And I say it is false. Nothing will really happen on alternative 4 because if I'm in the city limits over here and I have 10 acres, okay? And if I'm in Amboy here, got 10 acres. So I want to split this up into 75 homes, whatever, fine. If I want to split this up into 2 5s, that's fine. With the SEPA rules, the state rules, and everything else, guess what? It costs me just as much to split this up as this much. So your lot cost for this, it goes sky high. And that's why even though there's going to be a lot of land ready that could be developed, it's never going to pencil out because one of the hardest thing is to do is to split, you know, 10 acres up into 5s. It used to be before growth management came that you could go down to the auditor's office, say, hey, I want to split my land up into 2 5s. Auditor would say, okay, let's record it, put it up for sale. Them days are all gone. So alternative 4 sounds good. It'll get thrown out. But even if it did, you're really not going to see that, you know, about.
Let's talk about the fee waiver for developers. You support that? Should it continue?
I don't support it. It shouldn't continue, at least not in its current form.
How would you change it?
Well, I think we need to look at targeted incentives for, you know, for the jobs that we want to have in Clark County, which I think you talk about intent, I think the intent of this was to create, you know, living wage, family wage jobs in Clark County, and there are jobs being created in Clark County, but that includes the other cities as well, not just the county, so those numbers are misleading. The job growth numbers are truly misleading. The fee waiver itself, you know, is now, what, $9 million worth of fees, and you know, and permit fees are waived since inception. So I think what we need to do is look at what other jurisdictions are doing, what Vancouver's doing, other jurisdictions throughout the state. You know, work
What do you
with a
think about how
CREC.
Vancouver's done it?
Well, they've been able to attract businesses into their community. How are they doing that? You know, I think that's we need to have that discussion. What can we learn from what they're doing, and what's not working at the county level? Because I don't believe that this fee waiver program is working. I really don't. I mean, I think all it's doing is basically a handout to developers. In my blunt opinion, I don't see it being something that's really creating jobs. I just don't. And the jobs that are being created, and we've seen through the audit, those jobs would have been created anyways without the fee waiver. So, but I think we have to look for ways to incentivize, you know, the jobs that are going to pay more, and look at those options, and look, you know, work with organizations like the CREDC and do other things to bring employment into the area that doesn't require us, you know, handing out these waivers. Like for example, in Battleground, the one thing we do, and it's really not even a waiver or anything, is we don't collect impact fees until occupancy. Something that Battleground started here recently. So it's just ideas like that. I'm not saying that's going to lead to job growth necessarily, but we have to look and see what other jurisdictions are doing and what we can bring into the county to help bring those kind of jobs into the county as well.
Mark, fee waiver?
Yeah, the fee waiver is, I've said, if I go to Lou and I say, I want $10, so you give me $10.
I got it.
So if I'm the county, so you don't say that to the county. But I say, I'm gonna take $10, and if you say anything more, I may take another 10, so you're not gonna say anything. If I go over and I take that and give it to Mike, Mike is gonna say, gee, you're the best person in the world, thanks for that. So you won't say anything, Mike is gonna tell everybody, oh, I'm a great guy. That in a nutshell, is kind of the fee waiver. David Medor, or the council in the county, is taking money from people buying homes, and they're adding a little more to them building permits, and they're picking businesses to give that money. Whenever you play around with other people's money, David's got enough, he could give his own money, but when you're taking money from some citizen over here and to give some citizen over here, that's just not right for any incentive. What happens is, what we should do is, it's odd, but almost all regulation for building, and for building especially, and zoning, comes from a little committee called the Building Codes Council in Olympia. And everybody gets together and they make these new regulations. The state legislature approves these regulations, comes down to the county has to implement the regulation. What has to go on is, if you don't like the erosion control, or if you don't like these, there's all kinds of things that you don't like that really cost the hours of the permits. And we've done this, is you go up the chain and you get them things taken out. So then you cut out the hours, make less hours for the building permit, and the building permits come down. And then you work together with all the cities, and you work together. The other one is that, the contentions between the county and CRUC is, in fact, Jeannie brought this up, but the primary is pretty strained. If you ask me, the county still has a $200,000 unpaid bill to CREDC that we haven't paid for. But they go out and they say, this is the land available, they do work for all the cities, because when a person comes into the county and they first look at how we get along. And if they can face that we're not getting along, they're not going to come. So that's our best thing.
And Mike, you're fairly new to county politics. And well, Mark's mentioned he has a lot of experience in that regard. You mentioned earlier that because of that, you don't have some of the scars from previous political battles. That said, what makes you a better candidate than him?
Well, I think that I can go into this position. I know I can go into this position knowing that I don't have those scars or that baggage, and being able to forge working relationships with every single council member. I'm not going to publicly, even in this campaign, I'm not going after council members. I think their ideas that they present, whether it's the 2% may be flawed, the 2% cut, whether it's the way that they've conducted themselves, and maybe some issues there. But I don't have that personal. I don't have any personal, I have no personal, revenge or vendetta or anything like that with those guys, and Jeannie Stewart as well. And I feel like I could walk in there, and like I said, I've already started to try to build that working relationship. And I think there's an opportunity for that to be had. And I'm not naive, and I understand that we're not always going to all agree on everything, and it's going to be kumbaya, and nor should it be. There should be debate, and it should be, there should be some different perspectives brought to the table, and I would look forward to that. But I think, my demeanor, my temperament, to be able to sit, at a table with the council and discuss things, or at the dais in front of everyone, it's about listening to everybody. It's about making sure everybody feels respected and heard. And and those are my values, and that's why I feel like I can do this job and do it well.
And then, Mark, question to you is, you're running as an independent. have you changed your views on any policies since you were on the commission, when it was the county commission? How have your views changed since then?
Really, my views haven't changed. I think probably the only thing that has changed is my passion for the job has really been renewed. Sometimes you have to lose something to know how much you really enjoyed something and what you lost. You know, I was a commissioner that when a person come to my office, or when a person called, whether it was a county worker, I didn't want them to come to the 6th floor. I would never, and now, you know, I would never build a building ever in my life where the commissioners were on the 6th floor. It just gives a terrible thing. But I always met the employees on their own turf, whether it was in their office or out in the field or whatever. And I think if you ask, you won't, but I think if you ask any employer and any employee in any of the 5 floors, they have great respect. And I really care for employees. I grew up with county employees. I know they get a bad rap, and sometimes they deserve it, but for the most part, I was there to make their job better, to make everybody else's job better. So probably the short answer is, really haven't changed anything, it's just my passion.
Mark, you've said a lot about county employees, you know, how much you respect them, how much they're sort of your priority, you wanna make sure. Where do the taxpayers fit into this? I mean, you know, there is this sort of balancing act that
Yeah.
you've gotta have, and I remember back the last time that you were running, actually for the county commission position, and at that editorial board meeting, we were talking about potential increases for county employees, and you were talking about, you know, how difficult it was to essentially say no to things like pay increases for county employees, and you made the point that it's difficult to say no. I mean, because you're riding up the elevator
Right.
with some of these county employees, and it's tough looking at them and saying no. But where do the taxpayers come in? Yeah, you're not riding up the elevator with the taxpayers.
Right.
You're riding up the elevator with the county employees, but
Yeah.
how do you support the taxpayers who have to pay for this?
Well, I think first of all, you look at what the outcome is, and then you kind of back there. The thing about the budget process, the way the county does it, is that all departments have their request in. They're probably it's probably been 2 months ago they started on the request, and that comes in. It gets filtered down through the county manager, and then you really start looking at them requests. Actually, after that, is when the recession really hit. When we had budget meetings all the time, we were the first entity in Clark County to really start laying off. We laid off 105. We got rid of 105 positions, and we laid off 65 people. I shook hands with 65 people, and so that's probably my passion, because I shook them people's hands. I saw them leave, and now we have had a hiring frenzy in the last 2 years. The county council has really hired a lot of people in the last 2 years, and then they hire the sheriffs, and because I guess it makes good press, that's fine. And then they give all the sheriffs raises and everything. And then they say, oh, guess what? We need a 2% cut. I mean, you can't go through all this and say, we need a 2% cut. You say, 2 years down the road, let's look for a 2% cut. let's go to the HR and tell them not to hire anybody. I mean, it just, I don't know, I could use your word wacky again, but it just, you know, there's just a balance there, and you try the best you can.
Great, well, thank you. We'll move on to, give us your final pitch to voters, why they should vote for you, and feel free to mention any notable endorsements.
Okay.
If you'd like to start with Mark.
Just one of the things that wasn't mentioned, if I could, is what to do with Mark McCauley. And I've thought about this a lot. I know Mark. One of the things that I will ask to do as a chair is move Mark McCauley's office out of the commissioner's office. What I've noticed is that they're too chummy with Mark McCauley. Being on as a freeholder, I realize that Mark McCauley is an executive kind of in name only, but he's still an executive. He still holds his purpose. When David Medor walks, or Tom Milkey, or Jeannie Stewart walks by that office, it's very hard to be independent. And when I was chair, Bill Barron and I were very friendly. Well, them days are changed. I can't be that friendly with whoever's going to be county manager. They have to say, all right, you're not getting your way. Well, if I'm that close, it doesn't happen. So that's one of the things that I will try and move him out and give him some space. So I've, to get back on track, it's been a great election. And I've got a great person to run against and with. I've been endorsed by the builders and the realtors, Farm Bureau, to name a few. It's been an interesting thing, you know, kind of a wacky race.
There's that word again.
Yeah, I love that word. You give it to me, you know?
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Get it on the campaign signs.
Okay, they're getting full, but, you know, I've had the Republicans that didn't like me, and then some Republicans like me, and then the young Democrats didn't like me, but the old Democrats didn't like the young Democrats who liked me, so anyway, some person, in fact, Caitlin said, I don't know if it's a horror show or a comedy show, so sometimes, you know, it's more, but, it's been a good campaign, and I just look forward to serving everybody's chair. So
Thank you, Mike.
Well, since I got into this race, you know, my passion has been good governance. You know, we sat back, or I sat back and saw what was happening at the county level, saw the charter movement happen, saw the change in government happen. And again, it's a new era in Clark County government, and so I believe it's time for new leadership. You know, and I bring a fresh perspective to the table. I have practical governing experience. I'm not a career politician, but I've been around, I've been involved in planning, I've been involved in budgeting, I've served in a very similar form of government. I feel as though that I can bring a true spirit of collaboration to this new council, that I can work with everyone, that I can interact with and represent the council publicly, that I can represent, as we talked about earlier, I can represent the county as well. I don't mind meeting with every newspaper in the county. This is an historic election, and a really awesome opportunity for the county. You know, we have an opportunity here as this new council comes together to really set some precedents and really change the direction of the county. And I want to see this council come together and create a vision for the county. I don't want it to be Mike Dalesandro's vision or any other council member's vision. I want it to be a collective vision. What is Clark County going to be in the future, and how are we going to get there? And I think that that's what's missing right now at the county level. And I feel that you know, we need to facilitate that. And you know, you can't get anything done. You won't get anything done at the county council if the county council can't work together, doesn't know where they're going. You know, we know where we've been, but we need to know where we're going. And so we have to have that clear vision out there. And I would definitely try to help facilitate that and just to get that discussion happening pretty much immediately, because you're going to make a lot of important decisions as a council, and you need to know where you're going. It's pretty important. It's why companies have mission statements, and you know, You know, we have a mission statement at the county level as well, and you know, we proud past, promising future. And I think that we're now, you know, we've gone through some pretty tumultuous times here at the county level. We had the recession. Then we've had some practices happening at the county commissioner's office that resulted in a new form of government. But now we're kind of moving past that. I think it's time to really just put that all in the past and move forward. And so I bring that to the table for the voters in Clark County. And I feel like that's something that I've talked to a lot of people out there, you know, and there is a hunger for leadership that's not part of the past or part of the problem right now. There's some new blood, someone ready to step in and do the job, and understand that this position should be done with humility and grace, and not arrogance, and not trying to be the king of Clark County. It's really about working with the council, working with the staff, working with the community. And so I feel like I bring, like I said earlier, the temperament and the passion to serve, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. And any endorsements?
Several endorsements. I can mention Annette Cleveland, Sharon Wiley, former Representative Brooks, Representative Stone here. I've been endorsed by several labor groups. I'm also supportive, you know, my personal friend Dan Ogden, who's kind of a resident Politico here in Clark County, been around for a long time, great guy. You know, a couple of my fellow council members have supported me as openly as well. So.
Great, well, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
almost
Yeah,
over.
Mark, good to see you.
Good to see
I
you.
don't know about that, I
Thank
don't know about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Good weekend.
See you again.
Thanks
Been
for
a
doing
while.
this.
Mike, thanks for coming.
It's
Great to
nice.
see you.
Okay.